County Sligo. Now, our next guest in studio is another John. Good morning to you, John. Thanks for joining us. And you're here to talk about a situation that a lot of people I know will find themselves in. This is all to do with adoptions abroad. And in your case, you want to highlight the situation that your family find themselves confronted with at the moment. You're in the process of adopting a child in Bulgaria, isn't that right, John?
Yes, yeah.
But there's a problem, and it's a financial one.
It is a major financial problem, and it's not just facing ourselves, it's facing anybody who's entered into the process since the ratification of the Hague Convention.
And people won't be aware of this, because I certainly wasn't aware of this.
Unfortunately, it's only good news that seems to come out from the Minister for Children and Youth Affairs, and the Adoption Authority don't communicate with ourselves, so they don't communicate with the public in general, so that wouldn't be anything new there. So
yeah. Okay, so what is the Hague Convention? How does it relate to the adoption process? What has changed?
The Hague Convention basically came into Ireland, was ratified in November of 2010, and what it basically sets out to do is to stop child trafficking and to regulate international adoptions. As I said, to stop child trafficking and the like.
Yeah, which is fair enough. I don't think anybody would disagree with that.
No, and it is a fantastic piece of legislation, but unfortunately has been implemented in the wrong way in this country. What it has done is it's put adoption beyond the reach of most people. There's very few people that are actually in a position to pay the fees that are being asked. And what it's actually done is it's contradicted itself, because pre-Hague Convention fees for Bulgaria were €5,250.
Right, to adopt a child.
To adopt a child.
That's
and
what
that's the entire process. That includes everything legal-wise and all. Now, that wouldn't include any in-country costs or travel fees or anything like that. You would pay that yourself, which is obvious enough. But for legal things like that, because the adoption has to be legally recognised, and for all the translation purposes and everything, you have all of those fees in place.
Yeah.
And they're not a problem. You know, as I said, it's only €5,250, and it's quite reasonably priced. But unfortunately, the Adoption Authority of Ireland have seen fit to appoint or delegate functions to an agency in Ireland. Now, the functions that they've delegated, they're known as Article 15, 16 and 17, which are the submission of the pack to Bulgaria, which is your dossier, essentially, the information on you.
Right.
And the Article 16 then is what's called a referral, that when a child is matched with you in Bulgaria, that a report is sent to the Adoption Authority of Ireland, and they do their work on it, and then they give it to you, and then you accept the referral. And then the Article 17 is the finalising of the actual adoption. So they're the three duties that they've delegated out. But the agency in question aren't allowed to have any input into the decision-making process. So essentially all they are is a glorified postal service, is all they are.
Right.
The documents are passed from the agency in Bulgaria to ARC Adoption, which is the name of the company that's doing. And then they in turn then pass them on to the Adoption Authority. And that's how it works. And anything then goes back through ARC from the Adoption Authority back to Bulgaria. So really they're only a middleman.
Right.
As I said, they were glorified postman, not to belittle postman.
But an expensive middleman, as it turns out.
Yeah,
very
unfortunately, what has happened because of the implementation of this agency, it's increased the price from €5,250 up to €16,750, and that's not a final figure.
So it's the price has over trebled as a result of this.
Increased by 220% on the original cost, but that's not a final figure, because that's based on a 2-year time frame, which actually isn't realistic, because it can take upwards of 3 years at this stage to finalise an adoption. So you could be looking at a potential anywhere from 4,000 to 8,000 of an increase, depending on your time frame. So you could be looking somewhere in the mid-20s by the time you actually finish up.
Okay, so your family were led to believe that the adoption of a child in Bulgaria would cost in the region of 5,000, and now you're saying, with these new restrictions in place and these new regulations in place, it could cost over 20,000.
It more than likely will end up costing in the low to mid-20s by the time you finalise everything.
There are very few families who can afford that type of money.
No, and it's something that a lot of families, before they enter into the adoption process, you would have to go through. You would actually have to submit financial reports to say you're able to afford the fees that were in place at the time. And because the rules changed, we were 12 months into the process when the Adoption Authority announced 4 days before Christmas, on the 21st of December 2011, that they were delegating these services to, or these duties to ARC Adoption, and that they were backdating it back to May, which basically threw an awful lot of people into this situation.
Well, who does it benefit? It certainly doesn't benefit you, the prospective loving parents of a new child. It doesn't benefit the child in Bulgaria who needs adoption. No,
it hasn't. And unfortunately, what's happening here is it's benefiting the agencies. Not to put too fine a point on it, I can give you a complete breakdown of ANIDO's fees, which is the name of the agency in Bulgaria, and their fees are completely transparent. They're broken down to 10 and 20 euro blocks for state fees and things like that. But if you look at ANIDO's fees, ARC Adoption's fees, all you get is professional fees, state translation fees, overheads, direct costs. So you actually have no idea what you're actually paying for. And what it is it's a duplication of services. They're claiming and charging you for services that you've already paid for. Now, the worrying thing about this as well, and this goes just a little bit further into it, is ARC Adoption are actually, as of their company accounts at the end of 2011, are 46,100 euros in debt. And we've been given no guarantees on the safety of any money that we pay into the system. And this fee that they're looking for includes the remainder of the balance to be paid to the
Right. So the situation, I mean, you began this process, you and your family began this process August 2011, isn't that right?
August 2010. We were 2010.
2010.
We received our declaration in December 2010.
Right, and you had to go through all the process of, being a suitable family. You went through all that, which is a very vigorous screening process, as we know.
Yeah.
You were all set to go through Bulgaria to adopt a young child. You can't do it now because of this.
What we're being told is that we can't finalise our adoption outside of ARC, that if we use ARC services, we run the risk. Now, again, this is very vague. We're not being told that we can't, and we're not being told that we can. We're being told that we run the risk of our adoption not being recognised if we go through the process without using ARC's services. But this goes back to, I'm going back to when we come into the process first. There were statements on both ARC Adoption's website and... Well, actually, there was no noise coming out of the Adoption Authority at all, but ARC did state that it would not be mandatory to use an agency to finalise your adoption. They actually had that down as a myth on their website in the frequently asked questions section. And I know it's a phone call and it's unfortunately can't be proven, but I had this conversation with the CEO of ARC Adoption, and what he said to me was, well, you certainly won't need any help from us because you adopted previously, so you know what's involved and you'd be well able to do it yourself.
And I should mention that you already have, is it a young girl or a young boy, John? Little girl, little Russian girl, isn't that right?
Yes.
So you went through it all before and you were happy, and that must make it even more difficult for you second time round, knowing that it has worked for you before and it worked successfully.
And it's even more annoying when you factor in that we know what this work entails. It certainly doesn't entail an extra 11,000 euros on top of the fee that you're already paying. There is no justification for the fees that are being charged by the Irish agency. What we're paying for here is professional fees and overheads to pay for offices in Dublin. And as I said earlier, it doesn't just affect couples. This affects sole adopters as well, because what it's done is it's thrown them into a situation where, in order to adopt, it is recommended and suggested that you take a year off work.
Right, or one of the partners.
Absolutely.
One of the couple.
But in the case of a sole adopter, they have to take the time off themselves.
Yeah, which is a huge financial hit for anybody.
Absolutely. So it means that these sole adopters in particular have to factor in this extra 11,000 euro and they have to budget for that. And unfortunately, it has happened to some of our community that they've had to pull the plug on it. And you have to factor in as well that a lot of these people, especially, obviously the couples, would have been through an expensive and invasive fertility treatments as well at this point. So, I think what's happening here, what we feel is that we're being taken advantage of.
Okay, and as I say, there are a lot of families in the same boat as you, John, and towards that you have established an organisation to fight your case. Prospective Adoptive Parents of Ireland, is that right?
Yes, yeah. A group of us were kind of communicating among ourselves through the frustrations that we were, lack of communication from the Adoption Authority and everything. And so what we did is we formed a group. We called ourselves Prospective Adoptive Parents of Ireland, and we kind of lobbied the Minister and the Adoption Authority to make these changes and to at least allow, up to a certain point, the people that were in, say, before they announced the fees or before they announced the agency to continue under the previous system. And of course they're hiding behind the legislation at this point and basically not answering phones is our experience of it as well. But the four of us met with the Minister, four of our group met with the Minister on December the 7th just gone there. Yeah. And it was a very non-committal meeting. I know it became apparent during the meeting that she wasn't aware of some of the things that were going on. But unfortunately, because of the Adoption Authority's quasi-legal status, she hasn't a whole lot of power over them. Basically, the Adoption Authority write their own rule book. So, and as I said already, communication from them has been pretty much nil. They change policy like you change socks. And even though you've already satisfied criteria maybe 2 weeks ago, all of a sudden you don't satisfy the criteria now because they changed their policies.
Okay, well, this must be incredibly frustrating for you and your family, John, and for other families like you.
It is.
You're well-intentioned. You're providing a loving home for a young girl or boy from abroad who badly needs care like you're going to provide, and you're being prevented from doing so because of financial reasons.
It's not just financial reasons as well. This legislation was rushed through back at the end of the previous government, and what happened was they didn't do enough preparation work. Adoption at this stage, because Bulgaria is really the only country open to us because it's the only one that's Hague compliant. The terms of adoption are taken upwards of 3 years. But unfortunately, when you receive your declaration from the Adoption Authority, it's valid for 2 years with a possible extension of a further 1 year. Okay. So chances are, in the lifetime of your declaration, you won't get to adopt. And there is no facility in place to extend it for a second time.
Okay, so the legislation is well-intentioned.
Absolutely,
and everybody
yes.
would agree it was needed. But these are the side effects they're having.
Yes.
And they're frustrating.
Yeah.
And they need to be dealt with, you're saying.
Absolutely, yeah.
Politicians locally, have they been in this, is that a route you can go? Or
We've been down that route. Michael Kilreevy, especially Deputy Kilreevy, has been fantastic. He raised a number of questions in Dáil Éireann, which of course were answered by reading the legislation. As I said already, they're hiding behind the legislation, which can be vague. But as I said, he was instrumental in getting us the meeting with the Minister, as was Charles Flanagan, who would be a TD in an area of another one of our group.
All right, okay, stay with us, John. Sean's on line one. Sean, you're in the same situation as John, is that right?
Yes, we are in the same situation.
Bulgaria as well. You want to adopt in Bulgaria, is that right? Or
Bulgaria, yes. And we were doing fine until we met with ARC Adoption. Everything was going lovely. And when he introduced the fees and told us what fees we'd have to pay, we were agreeing with him and everything, and he was telling us that the money would be paid into a client account for us. But he told us also that he had no client account set up. So when I heard that, I wouldn't pay him the fees. And after that, he got very aggressive towards us. And he told me one day on the phone that if I don't pay the money, I'll stop your adoption. So we're in an awful state at the minute, so we are. It's wicked. The whole adoptive people in Ireland, they're living in fear. It's unreal what we're putting up with, and it's not fair.
And all you want to do is good, of course. I mean, that's...
Yes, exactly. Cannot understand it. It's all down to money.
And John has outlined the huge increase in fees needed to adopt a young child. Are you in a position to afford that, Sean, or not?
I am in a position to afford it, but I will not pay under duress money that I don't even believe will go towards adopting a child. It's gone into the pockets of people that shouldn't even be involved in adoption. In my view, the CEO of ARC Adoption is... I can't describe what I think of him. I couldn't say it over the radio.
No, you better not, but we can sense your frustration. So where to now? Will you proceed with your plans to adopt, Sean, or does it depend? Or
well, at the minute, I'm not registered with ARC Adoption, and I'm running the risk of the adoption not coming through. We are being told by UNIDO that nobody's sure on the time scale, but we could be one of the first to get a referral to Ireland, and that could be this year, and the adoption could fall through because of ARC. And I don't know what I'll do.
All right. It's upsetting for you and your family, no doubt. It's
it is, very.
It's important to you that you do adopt.
Yes, and I have emails from UNIDO saying that they're sorry that they ever got involved with ARC Adoption in Ireland, and I think that says it all for me. I can post you up emails if you want to show you what's on them.
Sean, thanks for telling us your story this morning. Finally, John, just one listener makes the point, just rang in a moment ago to say there are so many children out there that need to be adopted by families. And from once they're deemed suitable parents, that's what should matter, not making money for the government.
Absolutely, and unfortunately, this is what's happened. Is it's tying up the process in bureaucracy. And unnecessary. As I said, it's a duplication of services that's completely unnecessary. And as Sean touched on there, it's unfortunately it's quite widespread among our community, is a fear that if people speak out, that they won't be allowed to proceed with their adoption. Now, I have received assurances from the Adoption Authority that is not the case, but unfortunately, that's the way people feel. And you have to put yourself in a position of someone who's desperate to have a family and desperate to give love to a child, and they're afraid to open their mouth in case they jeopardise that. And that's we feel that's what's being preyed on, that people are desperate enough to have children of their own that they'll pay anything. But unfortunately, that's not the case. And we're going to continue to fight this.
All right. Well, one listener uses the word extortion. I won't ask you to comment on that, but certainly feelings running very high on the issue this morning. And John, we thank you for coming in and highlighting it to us.
Thank you very much.
And good luck with your...
Could I just say that we do have a website up and running?
Sure.
It's perspectiveadoptiveparents.com, and there is a form on the website that you can get in contact with us by email. The email address is info@perspectiveadoptiveparents.com.
Okay, and I hope it works out for you and your wife, John. And I think everybody would feel the same way. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks very much, Niall.
We'll take a break. 17 minutes to 11.
Ocean FM.